So Death of a Unicorn is a horror comedy that it's pretty much as advertised. It's about a dead unicorn, and the unicorn ends up coming back to life, and just carnage ensues. It's just it's very much what it implies. It's a horror film, or a creature feature, if you will, where the creature is a unicorn, and the unicorn ends up killing a bunch of people. In particular, in this film, the unicorn kills a bunch of rich people. So yeah, it's one of those eat the rich films, but with a unicorn in it, and I think like that's the best and the worst way to describe it, because yeah, if that's all you're looking for, you're just looking for like these magical unicorns that go on this like killer spree of all these rich people and use their horns to like rip them all apart. Yeah, the film does deliver on that angle. But I think in terms of delivering on something a little bit more, which, it does set up a little bit with these characters, it does fall a bit short. I think there's like enough weirdness and quirkiness to like these characters to make it enduring enough where I thought most of it worked, like for the most part. I will say, like, it is easy to root for, the two characters that we end up loving here, which is Paul Rudd playing Elliot and Jenna Ortega playing Ridley of the Kittner family. They're easy to root for. They just lost the matriarch of their family, and they're debating whether or not to take on this big deal, and they have disagreements about the environment and whether money holds rule over our life. And while they're having this argument on the way to this rich guy's little place to discuss a business deal, they hit a unicorn, and they're at first like frightened, like what's going on here, and then as they realize, if they touch the unicorn, they can apparently see the universe, and if they get some of the unicorn's blood on them, it can apparently cure stuff like acne and just everything. Basically, yeah, the unicorn blood is magical and has healing properties. So when they end up driving to this rich person's estate, the rich guy here played by Richard E. Grant, which I do admire how they kind of use Richard E. Grant. Like, I think they set him up to be like this kind of, old guy who can barely move and like can barely speak, and then of course, like later on in the film, he does end up becoming the Richard E. Grant that a lot of us are more used to in his more eccentric type of roles, like like How to Get Ahead in Advertising and stuff like that. The other members of the family, they're pretty easy to define here. Like, you end up kind of liking Anthony Carrigan's character as the butler. He's very dry humor with him, but also you have Will Porter, who's basically playing this this stock trading guy who's so far up his own ass, and he wants to drink and he wants to do drugs. So of course, when a unicorn arrives at his door, his first question is, "Oh, can we snort the horn?" And he does, in case you're wondering. Taylor Leona as Belinda, the wife here. She's pretty, typical rich woman who likes to think highly of herself. All these characters are kind of are pretty much like cartoon characters, like even including like the scientists who are investigating the unicorn, played by Sunita Mani and Steve Park. They're all just pretty much fit into like the typical roles for like a B movie here. And yeah, and that's about it at that point as far as character goes. Like, there's a little bit of an arc between Rudd and Ortega in this film where, they kind of, the father and daughter learn to see eye to eye. So it's a decent build. It gives you enough to root for instead of just having everyone in the building being, pierced and destroyed by these unicorns very brutal ways, which is, I will admit, it is fun to watch, a unicorn's horn rip someone's body apart, or go up their face, or decapitate them, or just, stomp on heads. Pretty much every death you could think of with a unicorn, most of it's in here. Most of it. And I do appreciate that it's a little bit more creative than just using the horn to stab everything. Like, they do some stomping and some biting here and there, which is pretty clever. Not exceptionally clever. Like, I think there's more wild stuff you can do since the unicorns are magical. But I do kind of like the idea at first, like when the dead unicorn arrives, Richard E. Grant, of course, is like, well, if the unicorn's blood can heal stuff, why don't we try to see if we can market this? And immediately the film goes into like its capitalist satire of having these characters quickly devise like a business way of trying to like divvy up like this unicorn and replicate its magical blood and all that. And while they're all doing this, Jenna Ortega is, of course, looking more into folklore, and realizing, she's basically like the voice of reason. Like, you need to, not mess with this unicorn, which does lead to some deadly results. And it is fun. It is like, I will say this. I did enjoy a lot of the lines here that the characters are given. There's a lot of funny bits of dialogue they have here. But it never, because everyone is such like a cartoon character, kind of like in their own little world within this film, there isn't much chemistry or payoff in between these characters. Because I kept noticing that as the film went along. It's like, I like these lines, they're funny lines, but they're not playing off of each other here. It just feels like, okay, here's Richard E. Grant's funny line, and here's Paul Rudd's little stumbling here, and here's like Jenna Ortega's dry wit here. And it never really builds. It just feels like we're getting to like the next beat here, especially within like the second act, where it becomes, just all about talking about the business of what to do with the dead unicorn, which I will say is funny for a bit. Like, I think I admired more the energy of that more than anything here. Especially like as the film goes along, it becomes clear, like, they're kind of coasting on the performances here to carry this film, which they kind of do. I mean, Rudd is, a believable type of dad here who's a little bit meek. Jenna Ortega, of course, the young voice of reason, does it well. Will Porter is just such a great up his own butt type of like alcoholic that he works perfectly for this film, especially as this rich brat. Leone does a pretty good job as well, and of course Richard E. Grant is just beautiful as always. Grant always makes a meal out of his performances, and he doesn't disappoint here. So I was very conflicted about this film. I think like it does have some lulls in the beats here, where it's just like, okay, I get it. This rich family, they're a bunch of pricks. I get it. Jenna Ortega is supposed to be the environmental voice of reason here, and I can see the wheels turning here. It's just like, can we get to like some more funnier stuff that happens? And it does come about in bits and pieces here and there. And I think in terms of like the aspects that I think I enjoyed more singular moments as opposed to like scenes in general, because it's like, oh, here's like the scene where this happened and this happened, because like I said, that there isn't much of a play off of, the characters don't really play much off of each other here. Like, they do conflict, but only in like the very thematic ways that are like stressed within this film, where it's just like the eat the rich narrative gets like very, very blunt at times. It's just like, okay, you need to add a little bit more to this. Like, I gotta have like just a little bit more subversion here. And there are a few like unexpected jokes towards like the end of the film. I did kind of admire how it gets a little bit wilder with the characters. Especially like with Will Porter. I love what they do with him by the end of this film. But yeah, I think for those just expecting, like nothing more than just a, fairly typical Eat the Rich film with a fantastical element, just lots of cool, like gory scenes of unicorns destroying human beings. It's not bad. It's not a like laugh riot, and I was kind of hoping it would be, just because like the whole fantastical idea. I was hoping that it would just, it would expand from that, not just, be like that repetition from Cabin in the Woods, where you had that unicorn stabbing somebody, which is a funny bit for like, 10 seconds. But you need a little bit more than that for a film here. And I think there's just enough to make it a fun film. I think very much like a fun, mindless film. Like there are some interesting aspects, I think, of like how it, tackles a little bit of like the satire and some weirdness to like the fantastical elements, like especially the trippy visions of the unicorns. But it never quite felt like it was going much further than just being like smirk worthy and a few chuckles here and there. Because I don't know too much what I was expecting from a film like Death of a Unicorn, but it did have its moments of charm, and I loved it. I think the cast is the best thing that works in this film, and they do carry it through, as long as you're willing to just see them kind of in their own little bubbles here, just trying to find a place within this narrative. So yeah, it's not a bad film. I had a few decent laughs with it, and for as much as I felt like it wasn't, doing anything different with this besides, just having like a kind of like a blockbuster style B movie, I guess. It comes close to being that, but I think, B movies do rely on a little bit of more camp than this. So it's just like, it comes as advertised. You know, Death of a Unicorn, it's a fun film, but it could be better. It's just like, there's more smiles and chuckles than there are like big laughs within this type of movie.